Hi, my name is Nat, and I am almost done development with my first ever Steam game, BLUMA. It's a cozy puzzle platforming adventure, and I hope you go try out the demo and wishlist. It will be coming out very soon. I started learning Unity in 2022, and here we are over 3 years later. I work as a full-time web engineer, and so I created BLUMA in my free time as a hobby project. And now that it is almost complete, I can breathe a sigh of relief and share how development went for me and some stuff I learned along the way. My first lesson I learned was to experiment. My favorite games are games like the Legend of Zelda series, Fez, Tunic, Portal, so I knew I wanted to create a puzzle platformer. And I spent a lot of time experimenting with the main mechanic of my game. I started the project with what I thought was a cool idea, which was what if the player could move the platforms? And so the player could hover, and that would kind of move the platforms along with the player. And I tried it out, and it wasn't particularly satisfying or intuitive. So over the next few months, I tried a bunch of different mechanics, and sometimes I would spend all day making a cool new mechanic, and then I would try it out, and it wasn't very fun. And I would start it all over again the next day. Eventually, I settled on the idea of flowers that, when they bloom, create platforms. It felt simple enough and easy to understand, but complex enough that I could use it to create some pretty intricate puzzles. I also loved the theme of connection and nature, so I went with that. But I would have never gotten to this mechanic if I didn't do so much experimenting. I just knew before I moved on to the rest of the game, I wanted that base mechanic to be fun. Now, if you are a game dev or you have spent any time on game dev YouTube, you have probably heard the phrase, follow the fun. And if you don't know it, it basically just means when you're making a game that sometimes that thing that was really cool in your head might not turn out to be so fun, but maybe there's this other part of your prototype that is really fun, and so you should work on developing that. Okay, so I had a cool new mechanic, and everything else should fall into place, right? No. Sure, it was fun to create the platforms, but as I started to build out the levels and the puzzles, it started to feel kind of hollow. There were no particles and sound effects, and it didn't have that juice, as they call it. I quickly learned that a good idea is not enough to make a good game. I mean, games are the sum of their parts. They're the gameplay, but also the art and the music and the sound effects and the UI and the visual effects and all these things. And without all these things, it's not so fun to play. If you are a perfectionist like me, you might be tempted to get all the mechanic systems in place first before moving on to art assets and music and all the other things I just mentioned. But working on the polish early is what makes the game fun. And so that kind of motivated me to keep going. And it was also a nice break to stop working on these logic-heavy mechanic systems and instead just work on some sound effects or something. Low-key, like, sound effects just make the game instantly better, specifically, so don't sleep on those. The obvious downside to polishing something early is you might spend a lot of time on something and realize you don't need it anymore. But as someone new to game dev, I felt like every time I polished something, I would learn something new anyway. And a lot of times I could actually repurpose that thing for something else in the game. Okay, my third lesson is to organize your to-do list. Back in 2016, I made a small mobile game with my partner. It is called Kitty, and it is on the App Store, completely free if you want to try it. But doing that small mobile game did not prepare me for the insane amount of work I took on. Things I would have guessed would have been solved problems could take weeks to implement. Now, full disclosure, as a hobbyist, I feel like speed was not my priority. I've always heard make small games, reduce scope, but come on, this is my dream game. I want to make the game I want to make. But there is a limit. If you start implementing every little idea you have, you will never finish. And I think the idea of cutting scope is hard because you have all these great ideas that you want to implement. So throughout development, I just kept a note on my phone. That was kind of the best thing that worked out for me because I could just write notes out and about. And I would just separate all the tasks into the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. The must-haves, things like the art and the music, that was what I spent most of my time doing. But every once in a while, I would just need to switch things up and I would just pull something off the nice-to-have list. And you won't have time to get to everything, but that's okay. Which leads me to my next lesson. Get help. As a solo dev, you have to do all these different disciplines. And doing everything yourself feels literally impossible. So the fun part for me, the thing that I wanted to work on, I love just creating a new mechanic and then making levels that really push that mechanic and saw how far I can take it. So what about the art? I got help. For the character art, my wife Sarah was excited to help. She is amazing at drawing ridiculous looking animals and I'm really happy with how they turned out. We also did the music together and that was a lot of fun to work on together, and that's actually the music I'm using in the background of this video. The credit song, however, was created by my brother, who is a super talented musician, and I will link his Spotify below, and I feel like the song just came out awesome. But you don't need to have a musical sibling or a spouse that can draw frog butts for you. I was so excited to discover the Unity Asset Store. And for the environment art, I mostly used asset packs. I chose this very minimalistic art style where I could kind of take any asset pack and just reduce the sprite to its outline, and that made it kind of easy to cobble things together, make it look cohesive and also still very professional. And then with shaders and post-processing effects, I think it really sells the cohesion. A lot of asset packs I used were really cheap or even free. Of course, this is just one way of doing it, but my point is that it just saved me so much time in the long run. Like, I used asset packs for a lot of my visual effects, sound effects, and I would never have finished without all their help. Another avenue for getting help is hiring someone. So for my game's icon and logo, I just looked on Fiverr and found an artist that I liked, and they were super reasonably cost, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. All this to say, there are a lot of ways to get help, whether in person or online, and sometimes they're even free. So thank you to everyone that has helped me with this game. I could not have done it without you. And this leads me to my final lesson, which is to share your work. Okay, I know this sounds hypocritical since this is literally my first devlog about the game, but there are a lot of ways to share your work. As soon as I had the early workings of a prototype, I just started sending it to friends in a Google Drive, Why can't I say Google? I started sending it to friends in a Google Drive, and they were really excited to help me out and see what I was working on. And sending it to them early really helped make so many early decisions that had a large impact on the feel of the game. Because honestly, as a developer, I am a terrible playtester. I already know how everything works. I've played it 1,000 times, and I'm kind of biased to enjoy it. So another way I got feedback was by going to my local game developer meetups. And this was so cool. It was so inspiring to see what everyone else was working on and to get some help from people who actually had a lot more experience than me with game design. But even more so, it was just fun to connect with other people. I mean, being a solo dev can kind of get lonely sometimes. So it was just really nice to make some new friends and connect over this new hobby that I have. It was a little scary sharing my work at first, especially early, but it was so worth it. And despite the exhaustion from the probably thousands of hours I put into this game and all those 8-hour coding sessions, I would work on something that no one might ever notice. And That one time I thought I lost years of work because I didn't source control everything. Despite all of that, this whole crazy journey has been so worth it. Like, even if no one buys the game, I'm just so proud of what I was able to accomplish, and I'm so thankful for everyone that helped me get here. So, yeah, thank you so much. As for what's next, I have totally fallen in love with game development and already have a new idea for a new game that I will be working on very soon. So, follow me on Blue Sky, on Discord, subscribe, all the things. I'll leave links below um, if you want to come along for that journey. Hopefully, I will see you all soon. Bye. Also, wishlist BLUMA on Steam. Okay, bye.